This is Story Recapped. Today I'm gonna explain an adventure, drama, and fantasy film called The Little Mermaid. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. Deep beneath the ocean, there is a kingdom ruled by a king, a queen, and their 6 daughters. The 6 mermaid princesses are free to go anywhere in the realm, but they're forbidden to go to the surface. However, they are allowed to spend a day above the water on their 15th birthday. When the youngest princess turned 15, she went above water and saw a young prince on a boat. The princess instantly fell in love with him. Suddenly, an accident occurred, and the prince fell into the water. After the princess brought him to the shore, she watched over him and wondered what it would be like to be a human. A woman soon arrived, so the mermaid hid behind a rock. The mermaid princess was disheartened when the prince opened his eyes and thought that the woman in front of him had saved his life. The heartbroken mermaid returned to the sea and went to its darkest depths to find a wizard. After she told the wizard about her desire to live like a human, the wizard offered to grant her a wish in exchange for her soul. The wizard stressed that her soul would become his property if she failed to find love. She will only be able to reclaim it when true love comes. The wizard granted her wish, and the princess returned to land, only to find that the prince was still in love with the woman he met on the beach. Soon, the wizard came to collect her soul and kept her locked away to ensure that she'll never find true love. A grandmother drops the book, The Little Mermaid, on the bed and tells her 2 granddaughters that she doesn't remember the story that way. Lily points out that mermaids don't really exist, but the grandmother hints that she has met one. The grandmother tells them about Elle, a young girl who believed in mermaids, fairies, and all sorts of magical creatures. Elle was left in the care of her uncle Cam after losing both her parents. Cam fears for Elle's life because she has a health condition that occasionally causes her to erupt into a coughing fit. He suspects that her condition is somehow influenced by Elle's belief that she is a mermaid. Cam manages to stop the coughing fits with medicine, but he hopes to find a more permanent cure. When Cam goes to work at the newspaper office one day, his boss, Mr. Coleman, assigns him to investigate a rumor about healing water in Mississippi. Cam expresses his reluctance to pursue the story because he finds it dubious, but Coleman notes that hundreds of people are testifying that the water cured them. Coleman further stresses that it could be a possible cure for Cam's niece if it turns out to be true. Cam takes Elle with him to Mississippi to investigate the magic mermaid water being peddled by a man calling himself Dr. Locke. For their accommodations, they rent a room inside a house owned by a woman named Lorene. When Lorene takes Cam and Elle to the grocery store, they come across Peggy Jean, who's very enthusiastic about meeting them. Peggy Jean notes that she hasn't been around many people lately, but she has become a social butterfly since the healing water cured her leg. Cam wants to interview her about the healing water, so Peggy Jean tells him that she will talk to him about it after church the next day. That night, Cam and Elle go to the carnival to find Dr. Locke. Elle heads straight to the fortune teller's tent and asks Thora to read her palm. Thora tells her that she is special because she has the spirit of the ocean within her. Thora senses that Cam is skeptical about fortune telling, but she reads his palm and warns him that someone will try to take his most precious treasure. After leaving Thora's tent, the two go to the main attraction, where Locke introduces a mermaid in a glass tank. Upon seeing the mermaid, Elle approaches the tank and puts her hand on the glass. After an employee covers the tank with a blanket, Cam tells Elle that it's just a trick, but Locke contends that there are no cheap parlor tricks in his circus. Later, Cam tries to buy healing water from a booth, but the attendant stresses that it's sold out. While Elle is riding the Ferris wheel, Cam sees 3 men harassing the mermaid, who has left the tank and is now walking on 2 legs. Cam confronts them, but they suddenly run off when they see Locke coming out of the tent. When Cam and Elle get home, Elle tells her uncle that she wants to see the mermaid again. Cam stresses that the mermaid is just a trick, but Elle insists that she's real. Elle suddenly wonders how the mermaid can stay on land, so Lorene explains that she is a bit like a sea lamprey, which can live in the river and the sea. The next day, Cam starts interviewing people who drank the healing water. However, nobody gives him convincing proof that they were miraculously healed, so Cam dismisses the story as a probable hoax. That night, Cam interviews Locke to find out where he got the healing water, but Locke notes that magicians never reveal their secrets. When Cam asks him about the mermaid, Locke ends the interview and tells Cam to leave. While Elle and Cam are walking in the woods one day, they come across the mermaid wandering on her own. When Elle asks how she got her legs, the mermaid claims her tails turn into legs every low tide. The mermaid then tells Elle that they have a fairy tale about a little girl born on land, but blessed with a mermaid's heart. She introduces herself as Elizabeth, but she suddenly runs off when she senses Locke summoning her. When Elizabeth returns to the carnival, she finds Sid, the lion tamer, whipping Ulysses, the lion-faced man. So Elizabeth tries to intervene. Sid threatens to whip her as well, but Locke arrives to scold them. Later, Cam sneaks into the carnival while it's still closed. He wanders into the elephant's tent and discovers that it's agitated, so he tries to calm the animal down. Cam hears Sid and Locke talking, so he peeks into the room and overhears their conversation about a girl with special qualities whom they've been searching for. After Sid leaves, Cam sees Locke playing a chord on the organ to unlock the compartment, where he keeps a glowing vial. Cam suddenly hears Elizabeth singing, so he follows the voice to her tent. When Cam accidentally stumbles into the tent, Elizabeth advises him to flee and warns him that Locke knows everything. Before long, Locke and Sid enter the tent to compel Cam to leave. That night, Lorene takes Cam and Elle on a riverboat ride. While Cam is writing his story in the study room, he sees Elizabeth peeking through the door. He goes outside to look for her, but he can't find her anywhere. When he returns to the study room, Cam finds her reading his notes. Cam tells her that it's still a work in progress, when Elizabeth discovers the part indicating that he doesn't believe in mermaids. Cam inquires if the healing water is real, so Elizabeth answers that she believes in different kinds of magic, but she doesn't believe in Locke's powers. Elle suddenly comes in to tell Cam that the dance is starting. When she sees Elizabeth, she invites her to dance with her. While Cam watches the two girls enjoy themselves, Peggy Jean approaches Cam and tells him that the magic from the healing water doesn't last. She advises him to be careful when dealing with Locke and tells him not to let him near Elle. Later, Elizabeth and Cam leave the dance floor to watch the moon. When Cam notices her staring at him, Elizabeth stresses that she likes doing it to see people's entire personalities, but she hints that Locke prevents her from doing so. The two almost kiss, but the boat suddenly stops. Cam surmises that the boat's wheel is stuck, and they'll have to wait for high tide before it starts moving again. Elizabeth suddenly runs off and disappears. Cam surmises she jumped off the boat, so he decides to dive into the river. When they both emerge from the water, Cam sees Elizabeth's tail and realizes that she's a real mermaid. Elizabeth explains that she used to live with her family in the sea, but Locke tricked her and took a part of her soul. She reveals that she's bonded to Locke, so she must go wherever he goes. Elizabeth laments that Locke has been taking her from town to town to sell the water in her tank as healing water. Cam urges her to run away, but Elizabeth notes that she can't escape as long as Locke has a part of her soul. Locke soon summons Elizabeth, so she leaves Cam to return to the carnival. When Cam returns home, Lorene informs him that Elle is missing. Inside the room, Cam finds a feather on the floor and recalls that Sid has a similar feather on his hat. Elle is taken to the carnival and put inside a trailer, where she finds Elizabeth locked in a cage. Elle tells Elizabeth that Locke found out she had a powerful form of magic because she has the heart of a mermaid. Elizabeth notes that she sees it in Elle too, but she warns her that Locke is evil. Moments later, Sid enters the trailer to take Elle away. When Locke comes in, Elizabeth tells him to let Elle go, but Locke contends that Elle is the girl that he's been searching for. Elizabeth reminds him that he still has her soul, but Locke reveals that he intends to get rid of her and take her powers. Meanwhile, Lorene and Cam arrive at the carnival to look for Elle. Locke takes Elle to his room and offers to turn her into a mermaid and give her anything she wants, but Elle immediately realizes that he wants to trick her. Later, Thora finds Cam wandering around the carnival, so she takes him to the trailer, where Locke keeps Elle captive. When Cam finds out that the cage is locked, Elle informs him that the guard has the key. Cam takes the key from the snoozing guard and unlocks the gate, but Elle doesn't want to leave without Elizabeth. Thora notes that Elizabeth will die if she leaves without her soul. When she mentions that Locke keeps Elizabeth's soul in a hidden place, Cam leads them to the organ in Locke's room. Cam then unlocks the hidden compartment by playing a chord and takes the glowing vial inside. Suddenly, Ulysses arrives to help them flee from the carnival. When they reach the main tent, Thora uses her powers to freeze time as Locke is about to introduce the mermaid. After Thora unfreezes Elizabeth, she transforms Elizabeth's tail into legs, but she notes that it won't last long because it'll be high tide soon. Before they all flee from the carnival, Cam decides to set the elephant free. As soon as they get outside, the group finds Lorene waiting for them. Cam notes that they have to get Elizabeth into the water, so Lorene tells him to take the train because it'll run toward the ocean. The group manages to jump onto a moving train before it speeds up. When Cam returns Elizabeth's soul, she expresses her gratitude to everyone for their help. Ulysses and Thora reveal that Locke promised to help them be like normal people, but they ended up as his captive for years. Soon, time starts moving again at the carnival, and Locke discovers that Elizabeth is gone. Locke immediately opens the secret compartment in the pipe organ, only to discover that the vial is also missing. Sid informs him that the group is headed toward the ocean, and some of his men are already on their trail. When two of Locke's men get on board the train, Ulysses immediately charges at them. Cam tries fighting one of the men, but the thug knocks him to the wall with a forceful kick. Ulysses knocks down one of the men with his brute strength and throws the other thug off the train. Moments later, Locke appears in front of the train and uses his powers to stop it. The group immediately leaves the train and gets on a truck to head to the ocean. When Elle starts suffering from a coughing fit, Cam realizes that they left her medicine on the train. Thora stops the truck so Elle and Cam can go back to the train, but Elle insists on staying with Elizabeth. Elle assures Cam that she'll be alright, so he agrees to continue their journey. As they prepare to move on, Thora senses that Locke is getting close, so Ulysses decides to stay behind to buy them time. Soon after they leave, Sid arrives and tells Ulysses that he's been waiting to fight him for a long time. Sid catches Ulysses by the neck with his whip, but Ulysses manages to pull Sid towards him and slam him against a tree. Before the group can reach the ocean, Elizabeth's legs transform back into a tail. As they make it out of the woods, their truck gets stuck, so Cam carries Elizabeth to get to the ocean on foot. Thora senses that Locke is coming, so she tells Elle and Cam that she'll deal with him so they can take Elizabeth to the water. When Locke arrives, he expresses his disappointment in Thora for betraying him. Thora attempts to hit him with telekinetic energy, but Locke counterattacks and uses his power to lift her into the air. Ulysses arrives and tries attacking Locke, but he vanishes into thin air. Cam, Elle, and Elizabeth soon reach the cliff by the coast, but they find Locke waiting for them. Cam confronts him, but Locke uses his magic to shove him away. When Thora arrives, Elizabeth gives her the vial with her soul and tells her to use it to amplify her powers. Thora refuses because Elizabeth is growing too weak, but Elizabeth asserts that it's the only way to defeat Locke. Thora attacks Locke with her enhanced telekinetic powers, but Locke manages to block it with a force field. Cam attempts to lunge at him, but Locke encloses him in a bubble of his telekinetic energy and knocks him down. Locke contends that no one can defeat him, but Elle clutches the hands of Thora and Elizabeth while stressing that they can beat him together. The three direct their powers against Locke and knock him backward. As Locke attempts to retaliate, Cam tackles him and sends him plunging into a whirlpool in the ocean. After Ulysses helps Cam get up, they take Elizabeth into the ocean. When Elle places the vial on Elizabeth's chest, she immediately wakes up and regains her strength. As Elizabeth swims around, Elle suddenly starts coughing uncontrollably. Elizabeth soon swims back to them and takes Elle underwater to heal her ailment. Upon their return, Elizabeth tells Cam that Elle only needs to swim whenever she can't breathe. Before parting ways with them, Elizabeth gives Cam a kiss. Soon after Cam returns to Loreen's house, he writes an article titled "The Mermaid in Mississippi." Cam doubts that anyone will believe the story, but Loreen tells him that it doesn't matter as long as he believes it. After the grandmother finishes the story, she suddenly starts coughing, so she tells her granddaughters that it's time for a swim. Lily and her sister Rose follow their grandmother outside and see her transforming into a mermaid to join another mermaid in the sea.
Subscribe to watch more videos like this. Turn on notifications. And leave a like, it really helps the channel out. Thank you for watching.